I think the partial solution to the healthcare challenge is to develop a two-track system, public and private, and then manage the relationship between the two. And you can admit there's all kinds of problems and difficulties there, but do it and deal with that problem rather than relying so heavily on taxpayers' money and the public sector to deliver health care. And I think it's eventually going to come to that just because the current system is financially unsustainable. You've got provinces now, I can't remember what's up to in Alberta, but it's well over 40%. You've got provinces, Quebec, I think it's 52% of the provincial budget being consumed by health care alone. Well, this is unsustainable. So I think that option is going to come. The question is who's going to be the first ones to do it. I actually think Brad Wall and Saskatchewan being the birthplace of the original Medicare, and them saying now, like, you know, that was a great system and it's lived its day. But now we got to innovate. If Roy Romano was the guy that could have done it, because he had, if it's done by a left of center politician, they don't question your. You know, say, gosh, isn't it terrible that Roy had to do this, because but his heart is really in the right place. Well, you notice how they handled the hospital closures. The media handled them in Saskatchewan, Alberta. When Romano did, who actually on a per capita basis closed more hospital beds than Alberta did. That was the narrative. What a terrible, he must have broken his heart to have to close that hospital in Estevan. And when Ralph did it here, oh boy, he's probably just delighted about throwing those patients out on the street and watching them squirm, you know. So I do think if the door was kicked open, the place it would probably be more likely to happen could be in Saskatchewan politically. Emphasis has to be put on the cost-cutting side, not on just going to try and raise the revenue. And this business of talking about tax increases when people don't believe you've come to grips with the cost side, I think is counterproductive, both from just solving the problem and counterproductive politically. So I'd put all the emphasis on the cost side. And then it's hard to know where to start. Like Alberta's per capita spending in virtually every area, health, education, municipal infrastructure, is all higher than everybody else. You know, you can almost say right across the boards. I think our legislature costs almost twice as much as the Saskatchewan legislature, just the legislature. And I look at it, do we have laws that are twice as good as Saskatchewan? All right. So, you know, those would be my two broad general things. Start on the cost side and cut broadly as well as deeply. One line that we've been taking, and it's not original to us, I've heard utility executives use it, is today you should, if you're somebody building infrastructure, pipelines, transmission lines, rail lines, even highways, you should think about it as if your project has to win an election. Imagine that Northern Gateway is on a ballot, and it's not the only thing on the ballot. There's Northern Gateways on the ballot, no gateways on the ballot, modified gateways on the ballot, some alternative maybe on the ballot. And you don't have to win a majority to win the election any more than you have to win an election. You just got to win a plurality. You just got to get more guys to mark an X by your name than everybody else. And I do think the infrastructure companies would be wise to have a group that looks at it that way, and looks at it that way at the very beginning, not when the engineers are doing the routing and when the finance guys are putting it together. You've got an equal group with an equal weight in the company saying, how are we going to win the election for this thing? I'm in favor of pollution pricing, and I'm in favor of it. Actually, I think attaching a price to carbon would be preferable to the other options, which is just increasing government regulation, including micro-regulation. It gets into regulating every enterprise, as everybody as a household as a consumer, not only as a producer. I think carbon pricing is, I don't like the word tax, and I've argued that with those environmentalists till I'm blue in the face. Whoever the genius was that attached that label to that concept. Like the economists use tax in that sense to mean a mechanism for internalizing an externality, and I know that. But the guy on the street doesn't understand it that way. He understands tax as the government reaching into his pocket, taking money and spending it on whatever and probably wasting half of it. The labeling is wrong, how it was presented is wrong, but the concept of attaching a price to whatever you think is bad, and internalizing it in the cost of the product, I think that's a sounder way of coming at environmental conservation than the alternative, which is just more and more government regulation like we were